Hey, let's go through a Maya software animation tutorial. So this is going to be a super basic, just how to get around, how to make your first animation if you've never made an animation in Maya before. Let's jump into Maya. So here I am holding down Alt and the left click on the mouse to spin around like this. You can also hold the right click and Alt to drag to zoom in, or Alt and the middle mouse button to pan like this. So left mouse, middle mouse, right mouse. That's how you get around in Maya. So right now I'm going to add a character. So if you already have a character rig, then you want to reference it into your file and not import it. So the difference there is if you import your character, it'll be part of that file and it makes your file bigger. It makes it so Maya has to calculate more things. And if you have too many things in your scene, it can just bog things down. So referencing allows you to keep your character separate from your file so that you can actually edit your character and make changes. And then you can update that reference in Maya in your animation. So I'm going to go to File, Reference Edit, and you can hit this little plus button. Okay, so let's find a rig. Desktop, resources, rigs, Ball-Rio, reference. All right, so here is the Ball-Rio rig. You can hit 6 on your keyboard to turn on textures. And so there we have it. This is a rig that I actually rigged for the Animation Help Discord server, and you can go pick it up there for free for anything that's educational or private use for your demo reels or whatever. So this is a rig that you can actually be using right now. And I'll have a link to the Discord server in the description. So here's the rig. Most character rigs come with this main global transform control. So I called it the global control. This is where the only thing you do with this control really is place it in your scene. If you're doing a walk cycle or something, then you would animate your character walking in place. And then in the game package like Unity or Unreal, they will take this or your root joint and translate that forward while it's walking. But if you're just doing an animation in Maya and it's staying in Maya and you want your character to walk across the scene, then just leave that there. Just place this where you're going to have the character start walking, right? And then leave it there and animate the character moving. So first, let's say you want to create a floor. And we have this grid, but I'm going to create a floor anyway. So create a polygon, just a plane. I can hit R on my keyboard to scale something up. W is the move tool, and then you can grab it gives you this arrow manipulator that you can drag with that arrow to go whichever direction you want. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. You can see these little squares that are floating around. This will move it only in those 2 directions. So like this green one will move in the yellow and blue directions like this. See, and it didn't move it up. So red stands for the x-axis. Green is the y-axis, and Z is the blue forward axis. All right, so here's my floor. I'm just gonna hit R to scale it up. Now let's start animating this guy. So first, when I start animating, I like to look at these buttons up here. These are the active elements in your scene. Yeah, I want to just turn off everything like these 4 buttons so I don't accidentally select deformers, mesh, joints, or IK handles. I only want to be able to select the controls, and that's this one, the curves, NURBS curves. All right, so here we go. So the first thing to do is, down here, this is your timeline. Down here at the bottom is your timeline, and we want to set our frame range. And your animation is most likely going to be 24 frames per second. And in all the years that I've been doing this, I've never needed to use anything else. Sometimes film is in, like if you film video with your phone, sometimes it comes across as 30 frames a second or 29.97 frames per second. But usually when somebody else gives me footage, it's in 24 frames per second, and I can animate on top of that. So I just leave it at 24 frames per second and just leave it there. Another thing you want to do at the beginning is right click on your timeline, go to playback speed, and make sure it's set to real time. If it's set to play every frame free, then it could play just wacky fast. If it's playing still really fast, you could set it to play every frame max real time. So the fastest it will play is real time, but I just set mine to play real time. So now let's move the character. This is an animation tutorial after all. So let's take the control, this one. Most characters come with a cog control, which stands for center of gravity. So it's usually around the hips. And if I just hit W, then I can move that, right? To set a key, we want to set the frame range on our timeline. So let's make an animation that is 48 frames long, right? So let's start at 0. So down here, you can see it's going from -20 to 1,000. Like that's how many frames I have. So I'm just going to type in 0 in this one and type in 48 on this one. So this actually will give me 49 frames. So maybe I'll change this to 1. So my first frame is 1. And my last frame is 48. So that's 48 frames. All right, so on frame 1, I can grab my controls. Well, let's make sure we're in IK. Okay, so the difference between IK and FK, I'll show you here. If I change this, so here I have an IK FK switch on my control. So this is how I usually set up IK FK switches. But if you have other switches that have a number here, usually the first name is the 0 or the low value, and the second name is the high value. So if I click on this and middle mouse drag in my Maya window, the 3D viewport, you can see that value changing. So this is going from IK to FK. IK stands for inverse kinematics, which means that if I move the last joint in a chain, it'll move everything up leading up to it. So I've got the hip and the knee moving when I move the foot. FK is forward kinematics, which means if I move the bottom one, which it doesn't let me move it here. You have to rotate them. So if I rotate this one, it'll move the knee. The knee will move the foot, right? And I can work my way down that way. So that's the difference. Is forward kinematics, you have to work starting at the base and move out. The base of the joint. So in this case, the base of the joint is the hip. And then the base of the next joint is the knee. The inverse kinematics is backwards, where you can grab the end of the leg and move the whole leg, right? So I'm hitting Control Z to put that back. And okay, now that we're back in IK, make sure. Okay, so to set a key on an item, you can either hit S, which look up here in the channel box, I'm going to hit S, and that puts a red bar on all the attributes up here in the channel box. That red means there's a key set on it. So if I go to another frame and I move it, let me turn that off for a second. Let's just move it up. Then go back. Yeah, I didn't set a key, and so it didn't keep it there. So if I move it up, see it's pink. That pink means there's a key on that object and on that attribute, but not on that frame. So if I hit S again, it turns those all red, and now I have keys. So now I can drag on the timeline, click, left click and drag, and you can see that it's going between the first key and the second key. Okay, but I don't want this key. Right, that was just to show you. Okay, you can turn on this button down here in the bottom. This is the auto key button. And what that does is, since I already have keys on frame 1, well, I already have keys on this object, I can go to any other frame and move it. Right? And if you look here, it put whatever I moved, whatever I changed, it added a key to that attribute on that frame. There's a key. So I can drag between these, and now we've got some things changing. All right, so let's just delete those keys, go back to the beginning, and all right, so if you want to add a key to just one thing, so say I want it to be just the translations and not the rotations. Let's go to frame 10. If I hit Shift E, then it put keys on the rotations. If I put Shift W, it puts keys on the translates, and Shift R would do the scale, but we don't have that option on this control. So remember, S, just hitting the S key puts a key on everything. So let's go to this frame. S puts a key on everything. Shift W puts a key on just the translates, and Shift E puts a key on the rotates. So those are just things to keep in mind. When I first start animating, I usually will grab everything and hit S, because now everything has a key on it, and I can now use my auto key and not have to worry too much. You still have to be a little bit careful with it because it only puts keys on the attributes that you change, right? But for the most part, we can rely on it. So let's just do a simple step. So first, let's give it a little bit of breathing room. So let's start 10 frames in. Remember, 24 frames per second means that it takes 24 frames to last a second. So 12 frames is half a second. So let's start at half a second in. He's going to still be holding still. Let's take a few frames in, and I'll just shift his body over this leg, because in order to lift up this foot, he needs to shift his weight over this foot. If he's standing up like this and he just lifts up this foot, it looks like he'll fall over, right? So he's going to shift first, and as he's shifting, then maybe here we can grab this foot. I'm going to just hit S to set a key, and now he's shifted over, and I can pick up his foot. And here, why don't I just also, you can rotate his hips a little bit. See, and it added the key to that rotation. Can pick up his foot. So we've got him starting over there. He comes over, picks up his foot. And then, so I'm going to just grab these controls and the foot, hit S so that I know that it's all gonna stay this pose. I like this pose. So then my next pose, he's gonna put his foot back down. So in the channel box, I can put his foot down by remember translate Y was up, the green. So if I make that 0, his foot will go back to the ground. It's like if I rotate X to 0, then his foot will be kind of flat. So I'm just going to rotate that, pull his leg out, and start moving his body over. Because a step is a fall, it's a controlled fall, right? Here I have a foot roll. We can come back like this. Okay, I'm gonna come up. And I want this to last longer. So I'm gonna grab this key that I made, click on the timeline and drag it a couple frames so that it doesn't hit at the same time that the foot hits. The hip is following the foot. And so then right after this, slap that foot down to 0. And a couple frames later, have the body come in. Okay, maybe rotate the body some. So he comes back, comes in, and then he needs to shift his weight again. So now he needs to get his weight over this leg. So there. And so as he's moving over that leg, then we can take this foot and, well, let's start here. I'm going to delete this one, delete this key, just right click and hit delete. Don't hit delete on your keyboard or else it'll try to delete the control. So just going to delete like this. And let's start, give him a foot roll. And maybe swivel a little bit. So he's coming over. Okay, up here, he'll reach his high point. And his foot come up. Just gonna rotate it. Get rid of the foot roll. All right, so this will be my high point of everything. Rotate those hips. Okay. I know I like this pose, so I'm just going to grab it all, hit S, and put his foot back down on the floor. So, go back down to the bottom. Just zero those out, put his foot down, and grab that, key everything. I just do that so that nothing moves. If I go back and scroll through it. So then the body after that is going to come settle. Maybe go down. Up. Let's make this a little longer. Go 55. And I have to drag this. Okay, it's gonna come up. And settle. Okay, so it's a little choppy, but if that's your first animation ever and it only took 10 minutes, then I'd say that's a win. Right. So let's see, what could we have changed here? His foot kind of does this double direction change thing. So instead of coming this way, I'm going to rotate his foot this way. Okay. And then the bouncing is too much. He bounces way too much here. So here, his body should still be up actually and not be coming down yet. Up. And I can probably take this foot and move these keys. So let's move that 1 and 1, and the flat, move that in a couple. So look at my my body, my cog control here. So he comes in. And start coming back over this foot a little. And how about we pull him a little too far over this foot? Maybe on this one. And pull him back. So now we could throw in some squash and stretch. So this one, if I just pull it up and down, we can get some squash and stretch. Oh, it's a little broken. It'll fix that. But let's say here he's coming down, so I'll make the stretch drag, then he hits the bottom, make it squash, then he comes up, a little bit of stretch. After he hits the bottom, have the squash, and there. And that was too much again, but let's put a key there, delete that. Okay, well, I hope that gives you some context for how you would animate a shot in Maya. So a little bit of a recap. We basically just set your timeline to how many frames you need. You can move things around with the W and E keys. Let's translate and rotate. And then you can set keys on things. And then you just move things around in the timeline. You can hold shift and click to highlight a frame and move it. You have to have the thing selected that you have keys on that you want to move. So in this case, if I grab this red line, all I have selected is the cog control and none of the other stuff, right? So just keep that in mind. So I have auto key turned on. And if I look at this and have this on, you can see that sometimes I've got keys on everything because I actually hit S. And sometimes I have keys on just on one attribute. But there you go. That is, I'll just let this guy play. If you hit Alt 1, you can hide the controls. It's a little poppy, but we could do a cleanup video at another time. So I hope that helps, and happy animating and go make awesome stuff. Catch you in the next video.